Very happy to be joined now by the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Kevin Stefanski. Coach, first of all, I want to congratulate you and welcome you to the Cleveland Browns family. And I'm sure this has been kind of a crazy time for you, but have you had a moment to be able to soak it all in that you are now a head coach in the National Football League?
Now that you mentioned it, there it was. That was my moment. I'll tell you, walking around this building and seeing pictures of Jim Brown and Coach Brown, I mean, that's pretty special. So I kind of pinch myself. I'm an NFL history buff, so to walk these hallways and see those pictures is pretty special.
Coach, we talked about the fans, the dog pound, and you know, just the excitement, the energy. This city, it is a Browns town. What is something, if you could say anything to the fans right now, what would it be?
I just would really tell them we're so excited to get started here. Number one, we want to put a team together that they're going to be proud of. And I think, you know, on a personal level, I'm excited to move here with my family and get to know them and get around town. And I just feel that the passion from this fan base, you can almost touch it. And I can't wait to get around these fans and feel their passion for this thing, because ultimately that's why these guys play this game. It's those thousands of people cheering their name on Sundays, and I think this place is unique because I've seen it. And I've talked to people that have coached here and people that have played here. This is a unique, special place.
Did you ever think, when you started off as an assistant to the head coach in the National Football League back 14 years ago, that the path you would take would one day lead you to becoming a head coach and having your own assistant twos going forward?
Not really. You know, I really have focused. I've tried to focus each day, show up and keep my head down and work really hard. And if I've done anything right, I think it's been that, just keeping the focus on the current job I had. So this was not some grand plan to end up being the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, which is pretty incredible even to say.
Did you ever think when you were playing defensive back in college that you would become a head coach in the NFL for your prowess working with offenses?
I just love the game. I love the scheme. I love the X's and O's. I'll go down that rabbit hole with you and spend some time on that if you want to. It's just, that's the fun part for me. Now, on top of that, it becomes, you've heard it said, it's the X's and O's and it's the Johnnies and Joes. So I pride myself on understanding our players and really getting to know them as a person, because for what we're asking them to do on the field, you really have to understand the people first, and that's what I kind of pride myself on.
With that in mind, have you got an opportunity to talk to any of the players so far?
I have. My thumb's hurt. I've been sending so many text messages. And I talked to Baker yesterday real briefly. He's down in Austin, and I'm going to get a chance to see him in the next couple of weeks. But I'm so excited. Number one, we have some really good players here, and that's a good thing. But on top of that, just talking to people around the building, these are some good people too. So I'm excited to get around them. I want them to get to know me, and I'll get to know them, and then we can kind of start to build this thing. But at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that I'm here for them, and I'm looking forward to working with them.
How would you describe your approach to offensive football, whether it be a scheme or rooted in, there you have some Andy Reid roots, you've got some Kubiak Shanahan roots as well. What's your offensive vision?
Well, I think it's our vision as the Cleveland Browns is going to be something. We're going to look to be attacking. We're going to look to be multiple and versatile. And what I mean by that is we don't want the defense ever to look at us and see a one-dimensional outfit. We want to be able to run it a variety of ways, throw it a variety of ways. And there's this thing that certainly with working with Coach Kubiak that is a big part of that tree is it's that marriage of the run and the pass game I think is so important. And I come at it from an angle of, as a defensive player back in college a very, very long time ago, okay? I know what it feels like when you're facing a team where the run looks like the pass and the pass looks like the run. And I just think that there's beauty in that. And I think that's part of what we're going to do here is make sure we put in a scheme that ultimately is difficult to defend.
Absolutely, and I know that there are a lot of old school people here. It's an old school franchise who love the fullback. That's not something we've seen around here a lot, and I know you've certainly employed that this year. Is that something you like to have, that lead blocker, that traditional fullback?
I have an affinity for that fullback. I think it brings toughness to your team. There's running backs that really enjoy having that fullback in front of them. Adrian Peterson was one for us. So it's going to be a matter of getting to understand our players and what they do best, but when you're talking about football, you better be thinking about that fullback position.
Absolutely, and a lot of people, as I said, will certainly like to hear that. You talk about the personnel, and a lot of it is on offense for the Browns in terms of, you talk about Baker. You come from a team that had two very good receivers in Diggs and Thielen, and Stephon had a career year this year. Last year, both over 1,000. The Browns have a pair of 1,000-yard receivers in Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry that I'm sure you have to be pretty excited to get to come work with.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one too right there. And ultimately, my job and our job as coaches is going to be to put our guys in position to go make big plays, not just plays. We want them to make big plays. And I think when you talk about Odell and Jarvis, those are big players. And when they touch the ball, they get a chance to go for 6.
How do you kind of come down? Some people say, look, this is my scheme, this is how I like it to be, versus here's what you do well, and so let's incorporate some of that. Where do you come down on that kind of a philosophy?
I think ultimately we have to be flexible as coaches. We need to implement a system. So it's going to be very black and white, and there's a structure to our system. But then we also need to be able to pivot and adapt, because in a given season, week to week, you need to make adjustments and you need to ultimately move pieces around. So we'll have a system that we believe in, that the players will be able to play fast. But week in and week out, you need to be able to have those little nuances that are playing to your players' strengths while also attacking what the defense has given up.
You called plays last year, a lot of success obviously with the Vikings. Is it your intention to come here and call plays as the head coach?
I think we'll work through that. I think we have to see the coaches that we add, the coordinator that we add, and see ultimately what is best for the team. And that's what's most important to me. It's not about what's best for me. I want to do what is best for this team, and that may be calling plays, it may not be.
And in addition to that, how do you incorporate, because I'm sure you've heard this word since you've been hired here, analytics. Everyone's talking about analytics. So I'll just ask you, what do analytics mean to you, and the data? For example, a guy like Baker Mayfield, significantly better off of play action last year than no play action. And I know you guys ran play action with Minnesota about 32% of the time.
Right.
Is that what analytics is, saying, okay, you're good at this, let's incorporate it?
Yeah, it sounds simple, doesn't it? It's we like tools, we like information. So when I'm making a decision, really in any avenue, I like to be informed with information.
Makes sense.
When the analytics name gets thrown out there, or statistics, whatever you want to call it, it helps us make decisions. And we're looking for every edge we can get. If by using that tool we're able to identify some areas that our players can excel at, then I'm all for it. So it's certainly something, and it's a multitude of things that I think we'll use to make sure we have the best product out there on the field.
When you come to an organization that has kind of a belief in that philosophy, collecting as much information so we can make the best decisions, is that kind of comforting to you, knowing you're coming in some place where that philosophy is here with Paul DePodesta, et cetera?
I think it's with Paul's leadership, and I think just walking around this building today and getting to know everybody, there's some really special people in this building. And we have so many resources at our fingertips. So we'll be able to use a bunch of different resources to make sure that we're doing what's absolute best for this football team and ultimately for the Cleveland Browns.
You know, when you interviewed for the job last year, there are a lot of reports were that you and Paul really hit it off, and that, you know, it seemed like a very good potential union. Did you ever think after that a year later you'd be back here and here it is coming to fruition now? You know, in this business I've learned you can't predict anything. And certainly Paul, I think, is a brilliant person, great person to be around. I think his stewardship is evident in everything that he's doing here with the Cleveland Browns. So I try not to predict it. I'm going to make sure my focus is on the day in and day out, and don't ask me for any predictions about next week or the week after that. I'm just going to kind of show up here, and with Paul and as we add to this building, let's all put our heads together and come up with a plan to make sure that these Cleveland Browns are playing really good football when September rolls around. How do you feel maybe you've changed in that year, or maybe even that the Browns have changed, that now it was the right time to have this synergy? Yeah, you know, he works in mysterious ways. So this past season for me was the most impactful I've ever had as a coach. And I say that for calling plays for a full season's worth, managing an offensive staff, putting the scheme together, which was arduous, and we spent some time and we were methodical about it. I think I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to work with a couple of different people and different personalities, and it was very beneficial to me, and I'm hoping that those experiences help me moving forward. Yeah, and obviously you've had a lot of success with quarterbacks. I mean, look at what Kirk Cousins did this year, quarterback rating about 108, almost 70% completions, 6 interceptions, 26 touchdowns. Case Keenum had a great year working with you prior to that. What is it about that position? Because we know it's the most important in the league. Yeah. What is it about that position that you think has kind of lent itself so well to you, and what have you learned about that position? I really enjoy coaching those quarterbacks, and being in that quarterback room. Each of those meeting rooms are unique ecosystems in their own right. Just enter an offensive line room if you dare. But that quarterback room is it's very cerebral, and you really can get down to the nitty-gritty of football, and you can
talk about defensive coverage, and you can talk about fronts and protections. So it's a room that I really enjoy being around those guys. They're always yearning for information and really to see what concepts attack different coverages. It can be a fun room to be in. So I gravitate to those guys. I try to spend some time with the other positions as well. Obviously, having coached tight ends and running backs, but that quarterback position, there's a lot that goes into it. And my job as a quarterback coach and as a coordinator and as a head coach is my job is to eliminate the gray. We want black and white for the quarterback, because when that ball is snapped and those guys are coming after you, you have to have some really sound answers to what you're doing.
I like that. You want to eliminate the gray for them, and obviously Baker Mayfield, the quarterback here. Did you do any work on him at your time with the Vikings?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And what did you think?
Special player.
Yeah.
I mean, the tape jumped out at you. He's the ability to make plays off schedule is natural for him and impressive. And I think ultimately the one thing you can try to coach, but it's hard, is accuracy. And Baker's got that in spades. The way where his ball placement to all levels of the field is so impressive. So we're going to pull it apart. We're going to take a look at everything, look at his mechanics and see where we can help him in every area. But the kid is talented, and I can't wait to get our arms around him and develop him in the system.
And I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to that, seeing this offense kind of take that step this year. And obviously the quarterback, as you know, very important to do that. I want to take a step back from that for a second and just kind of ask about, before you got to the NFL, who was maybe your biggest football influence?
I've had great coaches, and I could go back to my high school coach, my college coaches. I've just been around good teachers, good people. They kind of have set me on this path. When I interned with the Philadelphia Eagles in the summer of 2005 and was just eyes wide open and saw Andy Reid and how he operated, and Brad Childress, and just amazing coaches on that staff, including John Harbaugh. Just to see how those guys operated was eye-opening. And then I got to go back to my alma mater, Penn, for a season and help out coaching there. And that was kind of the first time where I got the taste of what it felt like to coach and maybe make a little bit of a difference. And I sat in those meetings and I thought to myself, I can help. I think I can make a difference in these ball games. And that was really when the itch first got me, and I've been scratching it ever since.
Absolutely, and you used the word before, grinding. And that's what you did to where you started to where you sit today, 14 years in one organization, multiple coaches. When you think about just kind of that journey in the NFL, was there anybody that you really felt took you under your wing and said, look, this is how you have to do it if you want to really achieve great things?
I mean, many people, honestly. The list is too long to even name, but I go back to from Brad Childress, Leslie Frazier, Mike Zimmer, just those three head coaches start there. All really good people, really great football coaches. I learned so much from them. And Coach Zimmer, who coached in this division and understands this division in particular, I mean, he's a no-nonsense, tough, just great defensive mind. So what I was able to learn from him, working with him over the past 5 years or so, just an incredible wealth of knowledge from him. But overall, again, I didn't set out to take this path. I really set out to make sure whatever I was doing at that moment, I was doing it to the best of my ability. And whether that was Brad Childress's assistant and his right-hand man, I was going to do that as best as I could. And then coaching the tight ends and the running backs and the quarterbacks, again, just trying to do everything I could to help our players. That's what I'm about. And you'll get to know this about me, but it's not about me. It's about our players. And I really want them to be the forefront of what we're doing.
Absolutely, and they're the ones who have to go out there. They're the ones who have to make those plays, and all you can do is help them get in the right positions, and they go out and take care of the business. What was it like when you got the call? Where were you? What went through your mind?
I was in the cafeteria over there at the Vikings facility, and I'm sitting there with Kirk Cousins, and we're commiserating about the game the day before, and weren't feeling very good about it. But then the phone rings, and it was Mr. Haslam and Dee, and got on the phone with them, and they offered the job. And it's surreal. I can't impress enough that I just have kind of tried to do my current job as well as I could. That they thought enough of me to come lead this franchise is I take it very seriously. It's not a small job, it's a big job, and it's one that I intend to do pretty well. And I'm going to do that because I feel confident that we'll surround ourselves with some pretty good coaches, some pretty good players, and that's where my confidence comes from, is having those guys around me to help me lead this team where we want to go.
You know, when the Haslam set out on this coaching search, they wanted acumen, football acumen. Everybody knows you have those. Leadership was the number one thing they were looking for in this coach. And a lot of the guys actually in this very locker room in their exit interview said, we need leadership. What's your leadership style?
I try to be authentic, number one. I think if in this business, if you're not who you say you are, if you try to be somebody you're not, these players look right through you. So they're going to feel me, they're going to feel my personality, and it's going to be very real. And I come from a place where, again, I cannot tell you how much I respect what our players do. What they put their bodies through in the grind of a season is absolutely incredible. So I'm going to come here from a place of I'd love to be a servant leader, and I want to help these guys in anything that I can do for them. And I think once they understand that that's where I'm coming from, that's when you really can take off and start to build a program, build a team that, you know, ultimately we know where we want to go, but us talking about it isn't going to get us there. It's going to be about working to get to there.
As the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, there's going to come a moment in April, probably, when everybody's going to get together and you're going to stand up in front of them. Is that something that as soon as you got the call, or even probably before that, you thought about that moment when you get the chance to address your NFL team, your Cleveland Browns?
I have been, and that is a moment that I look forward to, because that first time when you stare those guys in the eyeballs and they're looking back at you, that's the first impression. And again, I want to stand in front of them, and I want them to understand where I'm coming from. And I'm going to lay out the vision of what this football team is going to look like. And, you know, there will be no question about that. And I think once we identify exactly who we want to be, then it's going to be a matter of getting there. And I think the word that we're going to focus on first and foremost is work, because it's not just, we're not going to speak it into existence. So I think we're going to have a team that's going to work, and I think we'll like where we end up at the end of this thing.
If, let's say, people were watching the game, there were no uniforms on, so you didn't know what teams were playing, and you wanted people to be able to look at the team on the field and say, that's a Kevin Stefanski team, what would that team look like?
Smart and tough. You know, we need players that understand what we're about, and so much of that is we're just not going to beat ourselves first and foremost. And then we're going to make sure that in those moments, in those close moments, because these games are so tight in this league, we're going to rise to the occasion. And that doesn't happen easily. It's going to happen through a lot of hard work and understanding some situational football as we get going through the spring and into the summer.
All right, I know that when you take a job like this, you've been in one place for 14 years. That doesn't happen very often, by the way,
right.
in the NFL. There's a family to think about.
Yeah.
What was kind of the reaction for your family and your kids,
man.
you know, saying, hey, we're going to Cleveland?
That was interesting, to say the least. You know, my kids, that's all they know is Minnesota. So early, there were some tears shed, but once we started explaining what this opportunity was, they started to get it. And then really the thing that was the clincher was when they understood that Daddy was going to be in Madden 21. Once I explained that, they're all in.
Oh, they're all in. You're going to be the coach on their creative franchise.
That's right. They think it's pretty cool. I don't think I'll have much time to be watching them playing Madden, but they get a kick out of it. So I have two boys and a little girl, and they're all into football. There's times when I'll walk home and I swear I open the door and my daughter, my 4-year-old, says, Daddy, can we play football? So I've created monsters.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, just from just kind of a whirlwind standpoint, I'm sure it's been crazy for you. But what are the next steps? Obviously, you got a staff you want to put together and figure all that out. What's kind of the next week for Kevin Stefanski look like?
There's a lot to accomplish. There is. We need to finalize the coaching staff. We're going to hire a GM. So there are things that we're going to do, but we're going to take it step by step. There's no rush to what we're doing. We want to do this thing right. So for me, I can take coaching. So wherever they need me next, I'll be there. And biggest thing is I got to make sure I can get from the front door to my office as I make my way around this building for the first few times. So looking forward to the challenge, but certainly it's going to be something where we take it step by step.
Coach, thanks again so much for the time. Welcome to Cleveland, and congratulations on becoming the 18th head coach of the Cleveland Browns.
Thanks, Nathan.